Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Tech Gamers World. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can quickly and easily configure your THRUSTMASTER T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1 flight stick to work with helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. So before we get started here, if you could click that like button and subscribe to Tech Gamers World, I'm always going to have new and exciting content from the world of flight simulators, video games, and technology dropping all the time, and I would love for you to be part of my adventures. So this is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 being played on a Microsoft Xbox Series X, and I'm going to show you how you can very quickly configure your THRUSTMASTER T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1 flight stick, or any flight stick for that matter, to work with helicopters in this awesome flight simulator. Now what you're going to see here applies to both the Microsoft Xbox and Microsoft Windows PC versions of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. So let's get it started. So I've got my THRUSTMASTER T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1 flight stick connected via the USB cable to my Microsoft Xbox Series X. The switch on the THRUSTMASTER T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1 flight stick, which is over here, is set for the device I'm playing it on. So Xbox or PC, I have mine set to Xbox. If you had THRUSTMASTER T.FLIGHT rudder pedals, they would be connected right here. If you're doing this on the PC version of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, make sure that you have the latest THRUSTMASTER drivers installed and you've updated the flight stick's firmware to the latest general release version. So now that we've got the flight stick connected, the first thing we want to do is use the Xbox controller or your keyboard or mouse to get up to the top menu on the upper right there and navigate over to Settings. Now this is the Settings menu in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. We have General, Assistances, Controls, and Accessibility. I want you to press RB twice or use your mouse to move over to Controls. Now, if you've successfully connected your flight stick, you will see your flight stick show up under the devices list. If you don't see it, double check your connections, or again, if you're on the PC, make sure the drivers are installed and the firmware is up to date. The THRUSTMASTER T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1 flight stick, or any flight stick for that matter, is not supported with Microsoft Cloud Gaming. The game must be fully installed on whichever device you intend on using the flight stick with. Now, because this video is focusing on helicopters, we want to make sure that our aircraft is set for a helicopter, which mine is. If yours is set for an airplane, you're going to go ahead and go into the Change Aircraft menu, and then you'll come default to the all. You'll be set for probably, let's say, an Airbus A320neo. You'll have that check on it. You want to press RB and move over to helicopters. Now there are 5 helicopters currently available in this version of Flight Simulator. I'm going to go ahead here and select the Gimbal Cabri G2, which is one of my favorite helicopters to fly. So when it's selected, you'll see that you have that little check mark on it. And when you navigate back to the Controls menu, as we saw when I got in, it says Current Plane, the Gimbal Cabri G2. Then on the left, you see T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1 Presets Configuration, or Controller Configuration, depending on which device you're set on. We want to make sure that we're set on T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1. Now, what you need to do is configure a profile. So to do that, we want to move down here to Helicopter Controls. Now right now you see that it's set on None. And if you hit X or use your mouse to click on Filters and filter by Assigned, you'll see that there are nothing assigned to this profile. But if I switch profiles to a different one, you'll see I have some bindings set to different profiles. So what I'm going to do is show you here is make a new profile. So take your None profile and then go to the Settings cog here and hit Duplicate. Now you're going to name your profile. So I'm going to name it Helicopter, and then you can use the pre-finished stuff and then name it again. We'll finish it up with Test. So there's the helicopter test profile. And now we want to go ahead and apply it to all aircraft and set as default. So it will set this profile to default for all helicopters. So there it is. Helicopter preset is set as helicopter test. Now to verify, as you can see, there are no filters assigned to this profile. So it's time to configure our bindings. So first thing I want you to do is go up and learn to use the search feature, because as you'll see here, when you have the various categories, there is a ton of configurations here, and you could spend hours searching through looking for the ones you need. So what's nice is Microsoft introduced the search bar into Flight Simulator 2024 to allow you to quickly search for the controls to set your bindings. So I'm going to show you how to do that now, and we'll start with the first one, which is the cyclic. So cyclic is basically the yoke of a helicopter. It sort of allows you to move left, right, up, down, tilt, up, down. So CYCLIC. Now when you search for it, you'll see that various bindings come up. We have cyclic left, right, up, down. What I want you to do to get over to it is you need to press A again, or if you're on the mouse and keyboard, you can just click. But in the Xbox version, you need to go back, click on T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1. That will bring you over to these bindings. Now, so what we want to do is set these two. We want to set cyclic lateral axis and cyclic longitudinal axis. So lateral axis is left and right. Longitudinal is up and down. So lateral axis, you're going to press A. It's going to say scanning. Take your hand on your flight stick. Just gently lean it to the left. Joystick axis 4. Now, set cyclic longitudinal axis. We're going to do the same thing, scanning. We're just going to lean the flight stick forward. So now you've set your axes for 4 and 3, 4 being horizontal and 3 being vertical. Now, one very important thing is sensitivity. A lot of people have been reporting that their flight sticks are overly sensitive or undersensitive in their game. So I'm going to show you here how to check and adjust the sensitivity. So what you need to do is on either one of these bindings, move over to settings. Now, next to the flight stick, you're going to see a button that says hardware settings, and I'll show you that here by hiding the flight stick camera for a second. So you see where it says hardware settings? We're going to go ahead and press that button. Now this brings you into your sensitivities. So now what you need to do is define the sensitivities for your axis. So joystick axis 2, let's say as an example. You select it, then you need to basically configure the sensitivities for it by doing that all through the input curve, sensitivity plus and minus there. So it's pretty straightforward to do. Just go ahead and configure your sensitivities to what you like. I'm going to leave them as default because I like how mine is configured. It's never really been an issue for me, particularly with my THRUSTMASTER T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1 flight stick, but it's always good to know how you adjust the sensitivities. Okay, so when those are set, we're ready to move on. So let's go ahead here and go back up to the search field. Now, what I want you to do is search for trim. Now, what sometimes happens when you've navigated screens and come back is it doesn't actually search. So sometimes you have to do it twice to get it to recognize the search. There it is. So now there are a bunch of things under trim that we need to configure. So the first one we're going to look for is decrease rotor lateral trim and increase rotor lateral trim. So here is decrease rotor lateral trim. Now, my personal opinion here is when you're flying in a helicopter, you should use the POV hat for these trim pieces because it's quick and it's efficient, and it gives you the left, right, up, and down that you need very quickly without having to move your thumb anywhere. Or use the controller bindings, which I hate having to do for movement stuff. So I'm going to use the POV left and right for decrease and increase rotor lateral trim. So we're going to do joystick POV left. There it is. Now we'll do increase rotor lateral trim, right? And then decrease rotor longitudinal trim, we're going to do up, and increase rotor longitudinal trim down. So you're basically setting your trim for left, right, up, and down. And you can, again, configure this how you want. Some people like to use the controller for it. I prefer to use the POV hat. I just think it's that much easier. Next thing we want to do is find this one here called Quick Trim. Now, Quick Trim does not exist in real life. What Quick Trim is automatically trimming of your aircraft, and it even says assistance to automatically trim your aircraft not true to life, because this doesn't exist in real life. So you can go ahead and define a button to this if you want it. I prefer to stick to real life way of flying, so I don't use something that would not really exist in real life, but you can go ahead and bind it to any button on your flight stick or your controller here, whichever one that you want. So the next thing we're going to do here is go back again and go up to our search field, and we're going to go ahead here and search for tail, because we need to make some tail rotor adjustments. So when you search for tail, you're going to get a couple of different options available here. We want the tail rotor axis. Now, we're going to set the tail rotor axis basically to the rudder. So you're going to rotate your flight stick. If you had T-Flight rudder pedals, you would just use the T-Flight rudder pedals and make them go like this. But for this case, because I'm showing you how to do it on a flight stick, we're just going to rotate the flight stick. So now you can see it's bound the axis to the flight stick, the rudder of the flight stick, the rotating of the flight stick here. So again, just like that, it's going to make the tail rotor spin faster or slower and make you turn a certain way. Next up is we need to set some power settings. So we're going to go T-Flight HOTAS 1. Sorry about that. We're going to do search here. And we're going to go ahead here, if it decides it wants to search for me. There it goes. We're going to do search for collective. So you can see how sensitive some of the settings are on the version of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Hopefully with the future patch updates, they kind of streamline some of this. So there we have search for collective. Collective is basically throttle on a aircraft. So what we want to do here is, again, get on the T-Flight HOTAS 1 device and then go to collective access. This is the up and down throttle, faster, slower, increase, decrease, full throttle, zero throttle. So you're going to press A, take your throttle, and move it up. Now, one thing is very important to note. For some reason, Microsoft Flight Simulator, as of this version, which is the latest version in December 2024, has the flight throttle inverted. So when you're at full throttle, you're really at zero throttle. When you're down here, you're at full throttle. I don't like that. It's got to be the other way. So what you need to do is go over to the binding, go over to settings, and then hit set inverted axis. Back out, and you're good. So now when you bring this up, it's full throttle. When you bring this down, it's no throttle, and then increase, decrease accordingly. This has been a huge issue for people so far since Microsoft Flight Simulator has come out for this latest version. But that's how you fix that. Next up is brake. So we need to go back to the search field and search brake. And it's doing that again. Sometimes, like I said, when you search for it, it doesn't actually search for it. You have to do it twice. It's a little bit of a bug with this patch. So here is the various brake options available to you. So we're going to go into our T-Flight HOTAS 1 profile, and we're going to look for set toggle. We're going to toggle rear brake. So there's different options here, set parking brake, all different ones you're looking for. we're looking for toggle rotor brake. Now again, you get to find different brakes if you want to, depending on what helicopter you're flying. Some actually have wheels that can move, so you would set your brakes, your left and right brakes, which are right above up there. I'm going to hit toggle rotor brake, and I'm going to use B2 for this, which is my personal preference. Again, you could set it to whichever you want. And now we're ready to continue on here. So let's get back up to the search field, and we're going to search gear. Now, here is gear. So the first thing we want to do is get over in our profile again and hit toggle landing gear, because like I was just saying, certain helicopters have landing gear that can be retracted or extended. So I'm going to bind this to button 13, which is also known as previous. You could bind it to whichever you want. Now, we then need to go back to the search field up here, clear this, and we're going to search for governor. Now, this one is one that's super important to search for. Now, you'll see that when you search for it, you find a bunch of different options available here. We want to search for toggle engine governor switch. So we're going to go ahead here and look for it. So there's engine 1 governor switch, rotate rotor governor switch, toggle helicopter engine 1 governor. So if you don't see the one you're looking for, which is this is a good example of that, you can go ahead and search for it more specifically, and I'll show you that here. So we're going to search for toggle engine governor switch. So if you're looking for something ultra specific and it doesn't show, just go ahead and do a full search for it, just like that. And it doesn't show. So, but I know it exists because I've configured it before, and this is what happens once in a while. So what you need to do is search for different things until you find it. I don't know why this happens sometimes. Hopefully it's just a bug that they'll eventually work out. E-R-N-O-R, engine governor. And I'm still not finding it. So you could search for switch. And now there is a bunch of stuff that comes up. There it is. So I see why it didn't show. And this is a prime example of that. Toggle engine gov switch. There it is. So I was searching for toggle engine governor switch. It didn't show because I put governor. So the search field still needs a little bit of work, but that's what we're looking for here. And now we're going to set this to, let's say, you could set it to previous. Let's use an example. Now you see that I set it, it shows a 1 there because I've already used previous for something. So let's change it to that one. And just change it to any button. Now, the toggle engine governor switch is nothing that you need for this particular helicopter. But it may be needed for other helicopters. You may find that if you don't set this, sometimes when you use the throttle, it won't throttle up and down, because some planes you actually have to link the collective to the throttle in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. So this is good to know. I just set it, and if you ever need it, it's there. Okay, the last thing I want to show you how to search for is a pretty easy one. And you want to go ahead here and move back over to the search and search for CFD. Now, here it is. It'll show up here. When it's, again, it does that thing again. So you can see the search is definitely a little buggy here. There it is. CFD on, off, toggle CFD. So CFD is computational fluid dynamics. Now that is when you're flying in the helicopter, it shows you the wind and the dynamics of all the stuff around you with those green, bluish circles around your helicopter. This is great for when you're flying in wind, takeoff, landing. It's good to be able to see it, to model it around your plane or helicopter. So again, you're just going to go ahead and bind that to any button that you want. I'll bind it to, let's say, this one. There, next. You can bind it to whichever you want. It's good something to have and use when you need it. I don't use it that often, but it is good when you're flying in harsh conditions, wind, etc. Now, we've done a bunch of searches. I'm going to show you how to find stuff manually. So let's go ahead here and go down to Autopilot. Now, when you get into the Autopilot menu, you'll see various submenus, and there's a ton of them, which is why I say use the search feature. So first thing we're going to start with is General. We're going to set Toggle Autopilot Master. Now, I like to set my Autopilot buttons to the buttons on the side of the throttle body. So being careful not to move the throttle body because it'll register that movement. So we'll do A for Throttle Master, Autopilot Master. Then next up, we're going to come up to Heading, and then Toggle Autopilot Heading Hold. Now I'll do this as X. See, I moved the flight stick, the throttle there, so it registered an axis. There it is. So that's a good example of that. Next up, we'll go to Altitude and set Toggle Autopilot Altitude Hold. We'll set this as B. And then last but not least, we have to move down to Nav. Now, these are all kind of optional. If you're not big on Autopilot, you don't need to worry about these. I like to use them. So we're going to do Autopilot Nav 1 Hold and set that to Y. There it is set. Now, that configures the flight controls settings and autopilot and stuff like that. You can go in and add your lights and stuff like that to whichever bindings you want. Same as you would do in aircraft. What I'm going to show you here is some of the important camera stuff, because a camera gets a little bit confusing when you have a flight stick and a controller. So camera, down here, we're going to go to camera mode switches. A super important one is cockpit external mode. You want to be able to switch back and forth out of your cockpit to the external view. Now I'm going to bind this to the menu button on my flight stick. You can again bind it to whichever you want. Now, toggle drone is optional. You can toggle the drone camera so it can follow you, move around freely. That's optional. I don't use it that often, but it's definitely there. Next up, we want to go to the next option. So we'll go down to cockpit view pitch axis. So that's in cockpit camera here. You'll see that there is a stuff here, cockpit quick view up, right, rear, left. If you have POV hats, you would use these. Now, cockpit view, pitch and yaw axis. I personally recommend you use the controller for these. So set them basically to just leave them as default, because in the controller profile, these will be set for the sticks when you're looking around. So, but you can go into your controller profile and verify that, and again, set them to whatever you want. This is what allows you to look up, down, left, to right. So, yaw, pitch, whichever you need, you configure it. I again like to use the controller for that. So I keep both, side by side each other. Now, the last one is, let's see if we can find it here. Is reset cockpit view. I like to bind this to B1 because it's something I don't use too often, but you definitely want it bound to the flight stick because you don't want to have to be taking your hand off while you're in motion there. So the last one for the cameras is external cameras. Now, so we want to be able to reset external view. So you can bind this to whatever you like. I like F2. Then external view yaw axis and external view pitch axis. I recommend leaving these with the controller because it will allow you to freely look around the helicopter while you're in the external view using whatever bindings you want. So I usually use the analog sticks. And then when you're ready to get back to that rear view facing forward, just press F2 and you're good to go there. And then last but not least for cameras is the smart camera. Now the smart camera is a very nice feature in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. And what it does is it locks on to points of interest. So you can use it and you can bind it to whatever you like. I like to bind it to my flight stick trigger. So it is bound to F1. So when you're locked on to a point of view, such as, let's say, the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, or a runway, you can click and hold the trigger, and it will automatically lock on and show you that point of interest object in relation to where you are, both internally and externally. So that's it. We've bound a bunch of stuff from this flight stick to actions in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and we are ready to fly some helicopters. The one last thing I'd like to show you is assistances. So moving over to assistances, there are 3 assistances that are really useful. Helicopters Assisted Cyclic, Helicopters Assisted Tail Rotor, and Helicopters Assisted Collective. If you turn all 3 of these on, which is if they look like this, they're off. If you turn these 3 on, they will help you with flying your helicopter. Now they are on by default to allow for easier flights for the novice and amateur flyers. And as you gain proficiency with flying helicopters, I recommend turning them off for an additional challenge. So that's it. We've got our THRUSTMASTER T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1 flight stick ready to fly. And just a reminder, everything you saw here doesn't always just apply to a THRUSTMASTER T.FLIGHT HOTAS 1 flight stick. It basically applies to any other flight stick on the market that is supported with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 on the Xbox or the PC. If anyone needs any help at all configuring their flight stick with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, please drop a comment down below and I will do my best to help you out. If you could click that like button and subscribe to Tech Gamers World, that would be totally awesome. Thanks a lot, everybody, and I will see you around. Keep on flying.